Hello again, everyone, and thanks so much for joining us for yet another edition of Alaska Weather. I'm Dave Percy, a meteorologist with the National Weather Service, and I'll be hosting today's show on hazardous weather graphic here. Still a winter storm warning for heavy snow and reduced visibility, severe winter weather conditions here in the red shaded areas from the Yukon Delta, northeastward there into the greater Grayling area and Stebbins out toward the coastline there, and also up to the northeast here, right on up the Yukon River Valley into Galena and the Koyukuk Valley there for Bettles, and into the central interior Tanana, looking for possibly another 3 to 5 inches of snow here to fall overnight tonight. In fact, I believe it ends at midnight tonight here for the central interior areas, but stays out until the entire night tonight here, back to the southwest, and could see anywhere from maybe an additional 4 to 6 inches in this area. Now, in the case of St. Lawrence Island, that winter storm warning remains out until 3 p.m. tomorrow afternoon through 3 p.m. Tuesday. And as for winds continuing to gust possibly as high as 60 miles an hour, could see up to 2 to 4 inches of additional snow. And that'll, of course, blowing around, that will reduce visibilities to possibly near zero, definitely less than a quarter mile at times. Other times it'll be better than that. But wind chills with those northeast winds and the temperatures at times below zero, the wind chill temperature will run anywhere from 45 to from about 35 to maybe as low as 50 below zero out there with the stronger winds. And for the eastern North Gulf Coast, especially Yakutat, wind weather advisory out until 3 a.m. tonight for possibly 3 to 8 inches additional snowfall, or total snowfall. And over the northern panhandle, Gustavus, Juneau, and on up to Haines, winter storm warning for heavy snow continues tonight. Again, with that storm currently moving in, and total snowfall amounts there in the warning area, 6 to 12 inches. Otherwise, 3 to 8 inches in the snow advisory areas on down to the south. And looking at the satellite imagery today, you can see the mass of cloud associated with the frontal boundary here pushing in to the panhandle, bringing good increase in the winds today. Cape Decision seeing gusts 45 to 50 miles an hour, and also Sitka, east gusting, winds out of the east gusting to 35 miles an hour, and that direction that really kind of hit the precipitation rather hard. The snow they had earlier quit, or became pretty intermittent and light after that, in some cases halted altogether there due to that downsloping effect of the wind. Otherwise, down to the south, gusty winds as well. Ketchikan seeing gusts 35 to 40 miles an hour, and other areas seeing higher wind gusts than that. And putting that through the motion again, you can see the frontal boundary here right up along the North Gulf Coast, pretty tight gradient in advance of that. Middleton Island, peak wind gusts this morning, 60 miles an hour out of the east, still gusting over 50 miles an hour this afternoon. Storm warnings out in this area in the marine zones there. And also Kenai, northeast winds, 35 miles an hour in gusts, and Augustine Island, gusts 55 miles an hour over in that area. So pretty windy conditions here with this system. And rain about tapering off, about to change over to showers there for Kodiak Island as the system pulls off to the east, but a band of moisture up across the Alaska Peninsula to about Nunivak Island there. A little bit of a break, and then more clouds with the snowfall going on here over the southwest interior. You can see that all pushing northward, and then it kind of splits off, portion heading off to the northeast and another portion wrapping back to the west. And then scattered showers, warmer temperatures here over the southeast Bering Sea. Rain in the Pribilos today, with temperatures in the upper 30s, obviously due to that southeast wind behind the frontal boundary here. Otherwise, snow, kind of a more convective nature a little bit here in this area. The main frontal type precipitation along and to the northwest of the frontal boundary. And some of that moisture sliding up to the northeast, not real heavy up in this area, but there was some snow right on up the Yukon River Valley to where it hits the Porcupine River, and then it kind of stops by the time you get to the southern slopes of the Eastern Brooks Range. Dry and well below zero on the temperatures continue up here for the north slope on out to the Arctic coast under some ridging there. So winds are on the light side, but you can see the pretty tight gradient here supporting those strong winds. They'll continue tonight and into tomorrow, Bering Strait and right on down into St. Lawrence Island. And across the Bering Sea, northerlies, pretty gusty as well, 35 to 50 miles an hour, and that brought the snowfall levels back down to sea level here for the western Aleutians, but rain mid-afternoon still falling at AKwx, temperature in the upper 30s there, rain to the east or showers right on up, and then it cuts off here along the Alaska Peninsula in something of a break. You can see some clearings showing up too, just east of the Pribilofs and on down toward the Alaska Peninsula. And then this system here right off the southeast coast, good gradient there supporting those 40 to 60 mile an hour wind gusts today with rain. I'm a little fast bringing the rain. That's mostly off the coast here. It is off the coast, definitely at Sitka, 30 degrees with those east winds and below freezing there, but trying to mix down farther to the south. And for tonight, they'll probably have a little bit better chance. Their front breaks up here. Portion of it moves in, but gets clobbered by that high over the Northwest Territories. So we're looking at rain along the coast, snow continuing, northern Panhandle, and along the North Gulf Coast. Looks like some snow will be coming across south central Alaska here with band and an upper level trough kicking northeastward. So periods of snow, several inches, anywhere from 2 to 4 inches, depending on where you are here for the Kenai Peninsula, Cook Inlet, Mananuska, Susitna Valley. But north of the Alaska Range, dry. Southwest flow aloft is dry for the upper Tanana Valley there, 40-mile country. And then you get some upsloping toward the Brooks Range again, pick up some light snow, but the snow will continue, although trending downward as far as rates go. And but strong gusty winds continue tonight here through the Bering Strait, St. Lawrence Island. Winds are not all that bad. Looks like maybe some gusts 25 to 35 at the most here for the Alaska Peninsula out of the south-southeast, and mixed rain and snow showers. Also with this system coming into the central Aleutians, colder air back out to the west there for snow showers, and northwest winds or north-northwest gusting, well, maybe to 40, 45 miles an hour. But you can see the downward trend or the gradient beginning to slacken out. Actually looks like it may tighten up a little bit for tomorrow there, or not much difference. That's why the winter storm warning stays out there with the low wind chills for St. Lawrence Island through tomorrow. But it sees some pretty noticeable improvement here, mostly snow showers or light snow now with less wind right on along this frontal boundary here with areas of snow and snow showers up to the Brooks Range, staying dry, central and western Arctic coast, western north slope. And another front here with some moisture, mostly rain at sea level there for the Aleutians. Pribilofs kind of in the warm sector, the weak low there, so periods of rain and fog. Mixture of precipitation, Kodiak Island, Alaska Peninsula, on up into southern Cook Inlet. Kind of a break here. That area moves northeastward tonight and early tomorrow. By tomorrow afternoon, which is when this map's drawn, it'll probably, snow will probably mostly have ended here across Cook Inlet into the Susitna Valley. Take a little longer for the Mananuska Valley as well. Copper River Basin now will see a better chance of snow, but that all staying south of the Alaska Range. And for the day on Wednesday, that next system we saw on the previous map tracks eastward here, sets or moves to, doesn't set up, but it moves to just south of AKwx and Atka on Wednesday afternoon. Mixture of snow or snow possibly mixed with rain, pretty cold temperatures aloft there, and all the south winds now are off to the east, so it could be snow for AKwx and Atka, but break here, some sun possible there, weak ridging between this trough and that system there, and that trough will bring some scattered rain or snow showers to Kodiak Island, and still periods of light snow over the southwest interior with that system, and unsettled, gusty southwest winds there for the Panhandle, rain and snow at times. For the lows tonight over that way, mid-teens north to upper 20s there on the central coast, 35 to 45 below for the north slope and Arctic coast for your lows, and a shade below zero here, 0 to 10 below for the areas north of the Alaska Range. Teens, south central Alaska, mid-30s Kodiak, the Alaska Peninsula and Aleutians. And your highs for tomorrow, staying below zero, St. Lawrence Island, and 25 to 35 below north slope Arctic coast. 5 to 10 above central interior, and mid to upper 20s here, southern or south central Alaska, with temperatures near 40 along the coast of the Panhandle. Lows the following morning shaping up like this, about like your highs tomorrow there for the Arctic coast and North Slope, and then lows 15 to 20 south central Alaska, and in the 30s for the Panhandle, followed by highs in the mid 40s for the southeast coast, and mid to upper 20s southern Alaska, still below zero for the North Slope.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Moving into the flying weather section, IFR really widespread here, central Bering Sea, right up into the southwest from Bristol Bay, Alaska Peninsula, southwest Kodiak Island, all the way up into Selawik Valley. Then it goes VFR, northwest coast, and most of the North Slope, lower conditions off to the east, with that IFR extending right up all the way to the border. And then roughly Yukon Valley there, or I'm sorry, Yukon Flats, down into the upper Tanana Valley, 40-mile country. VFR tomorrow morning until you get to the Alaska Range. IFR with one system coming through. So starting out IFR, Cook Inlet's Manusca, Susitna Valley, Copper River Basin, North Gulf Coast. Panhandle will be IFR for the next 2 days. And for the afternoon, marginal VFR becoming marginal here, south central Alaska. Hanging on to some IFR though down along the coast. Could be some areas of VFR breaking out in the afternoon behind that system. And then back to the IFR for the southwest coast and the Bering Sea. Gotta get way out to Shimianatu though, going VFR. And VFR holding there, say Shishmaref and maybe Kotzebue up the coast there, all the way eastward to roughly Dead Horse. And for Wednesday morning, IFR, that southwest flow holding, especially in a band here from the Brooks Range, eastern Arctic coast, North Slope, right on down the Yukon River Valley and Kuskokwim Delta as well, and then westward across the northern Bering Sea, but just south of St. Lawrence Island, and the marginal VFR cutting off right around Teller or so, and Wales Tin City maybe VFR. And then Lucian's not looking too bad. Fox Islands, mostly VFR, Alaska Peninsula from, say, False Pass there, and then southern, southwest Bering with some IFR there just into the Adak-Atka area, IFR east across the Gulf here, and again into the Panhandle. And again, that may show some improvement to marginal VFR, say from Sitka, Port Alexander on down across Prince of Wales Island, otherwise staying IFR elsewhere. Some VFR breaking out there, possibly Chiniak Marmot Bay up to Fognak Island, but marginal for Cook Inlet. IFR, again, northern Cook Inlet, north of Kenai, on up into the Manusca, Susitna Valley, Turnagain Arm, Kenai Peninsula, North Gulf Coast, and to the Talkeetna Mountains. But courtesy of the Alaska Range here with southwest flow, VFR on the north side, upper Tanana Valley, 40-mile country, in this zone of IFR back here holding and actually expanding back to the west a little bit from the morning. And for Anatuvik, IFR. Adigan, though, IFR looks like it'll become marginal VFR in the afternoon, so some improvement there. And Lake Clark and Merrill, IFR becoming marginal. Rainy, IFR probably won't become marginal until tomorrow evening for Rainy Pass. Windy, though, will be IFR the entire day and into the evening. Isabel, same thing, IFR. Mentasta will go marginal. And Tanita, IFR, becoming possibly VFR by late afternoon. And Portage as well, or Tanita will become VFR during the afternoon. Portage becomes VFR late tomorrow afternoon. Chilkoot and White, IFR, freezing levels. 2,000 feet, just barely reaching the south coast of the Alaska Peninsula, here, south of Kodiak Island, and then cutting through the northern Panhandle, 4,000 to 6,000 feet, Prince of Wales Island. And for icing, system coming through, so band of icing or elevated icing potential here, Copper River Basin northwestward and then back down to St. Lawrence Island. And this heavier area, at least through tomorrow, should stay south of Kodiak Island. And checking the jet stream, jet now tomorrow will be, actually the strongest jet will be south of the state into the Queen Charlotte Islands, 130 knots, but southwest flow all through this area here the low pressure troughs out over the western central Bering, and then the Arctic jet coming around the polar vortex there just north of the Arctic coast. And 9,000 feet, 35 knot winds from the southwest into the panhandle. Otherwise, south 25 to 35, Alaska Peninsula, southwest 25 Arctic coast. Westerly is not too bad for the Aleutians, 25 knots. And at 3,000 feet, a little bit lighter, but still kind of brisk here along the Aleutians. Westerlies 25 to 35 knots, but lighter west of Adak, 15 knots for the western Aleutians. Southerlies 15 to 25 here, pretty light over the interior out of the southwest. Southwest 10 to 20 for the panhandle. Turbulence, some moderate chop northwest coast, St. Lawrence Island, and the Alaska Peninsula and eastern Aleutians.
Hello again, I'm meteorologist Dave Snider with the National Weather Service with another edition of Alaska Weather Facts. And joining me today are not just one, but two people, both with the last name Stevens, which is even more fun, but no relation. We have Eric Stevens from Dehne and George Stevens, who is a mechanical engineering student from the University of Alaska Fairbanks. Did I get that right?
Yep.
Awesome. And today you guys brought a really cool toy, or I should say tool, with you. It's a sandbox, but why are you guys working on a sandbox?
Well, it's part of our senior design project, and we were approached by AKwx to build this for them. They had a proof of concept that they developed about a year ago, I think, and they wanted a more robust version that they could pack onto a plane and take places, and it's a handy learning tool for kids and adults.
So you're a mechanical engineering student. You've built a traveling sandbox for the experimental program to stimulate competitive research, EPSCoR, and Dehne's facilitated this. But why do we need a traveling sandbox?
Well, the prototype was such a big hit that they decided they wanted another one, actually two, that they could that would be easier to travel with, you know, possibly marketable even.
Okay, so this is a traveling sandbox that's got a lot of bits and pieces and a computer hooked up to it. What is the computer doing with the sand?
The computer actually uses a Kinect sensor to read the topography of the sand or the shape of the sand, and then the computer translates that into information which it projects using a projector onto the sand, showing topographical lines and which is representative of the shape of the sand.
Okay, so this is a live mapping tool?
Yeah. It's interactive. As you're moving your hands through it, it is actively following and changing the lines to fit what you're doing.
That sounds like something I could have in my backyard.
Yep.
It'd be a lot of fun. So you guys had to change the design a little bit to make this more Alaska-fied, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, how'd you do that?
Well, the original was made out of basically lumber and Simpson strong tie type stuff, and we rebuilt it to make it lighter and basically more transportable. We can pack it down to a fairly small size, and it can be loaded onto a plane and flown anywhere in the state.
Which you guys did today. And you have plans to take this in other places of Alaska, right?
Yep, we're actually going to be headed down to Homer with it later today.
Okay, very good. Eric, how does this fit into science learning around Alaska?
Well, you know what? I think it is a tool and it is a toy. And it brings out a smile from an 8-year-old and the smile from a 48-year-old with that inner 8-year-old wanting to get out. The sandbox, it's an interactive learning tool that teaches us how topography in the 3 dimensions is related to, say, a 2-dimensional map. More about that later. Just like George was saying, it's got a Kinect sensor, not just for video games anymore. It can sense out the lay of the land there, feeds that information in the computer. Computer identifies that, sends a signal to a projector to send topographic lines to map over that lumpy ground. So you get a 3-dimensional topo map out of it. And my favorite thing about it, this is the thing that stops people at the trade show, they stop at your booth and don't leave, is that you run your hand through that sandbox and it responds in real time. It remaps the topography as you get to be Mr. Tectonic Plate Drifter there. You can make things how you want. Well, what if we made a really high mountain here and a low valley there, and the lines adjust to what you did? It's a learning tool because it shows you that connection between these 2-dimensional topo lines and what's really out in Alaska. And Alaska's a place with all kinds of topography. You know, we're from the Great Plains, where topo maps tend to be just like blank pieces of paper, but Alaska is particularly gifted in this regard, and this tool helps us, I think, learn more about our state, really.
Absolutely. And so this is going to enhance STEM learning, the science, technology, engineering, and math in many different locations around Alaska. Then this would be something that kids and teachers can get their hands on.
It sure is. And I mentioned the it's like flypaper at a booth that, or at the Science Potpourri when we had Greg's original version of this sandbox, and that one was made out of scraps of wood, and it was a prototype. But even that one, before it had some of the refinements that George and crew have made for this newer, upscaled, maybe a 2.0 version of the sandbox, even that one was so attractive to people. It just demonstrated that this has potential to be a learning tool, an outreach tool, an education tool that now is portable and can go places in Alaska. Of course, there's only one sandbox, can't be everywhere at once, but hopefully it gets out there, gets the word out about EPSCoR and what science is being done here for Alaskans.
All right, that sounds really interesting, and I can't wait to get my hands in the sand and try this out for myself. We're going to demonstrate this here in our next segment of Alaska Weather Facts, but before we go, we want to remind you that EPSCoR, which is a new acronym for me now, but I'm going to remember this because you can follow them on Facebook and Twitter, and I invite you to do that. Alaska EPSCoR is also something that facilitates science learning at the University of Alaska around the state, and that stands for Experimental Program to Stimulate Competitive Research. So check that out, and make sure you tune in tomorrow because we're going to have the next version where we actually get our hands in the sand and check out how this works and demonstrates that topography. So for now, I'm meteorologist Dave Snider with this edition of Alaska Weather Facts, and we'll see you again next time.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Back sea ice analysis today. Well, the area down in here, say south of Nunivak Island, has reduced ice due to the beating it took from the winds yesterday into today, and this area opening there in the Bristol Bay area, but still ice up to the north here, just maybe a little lower concentration. And the forecast is from the area here, say St. Matthew Island, over to the, well, up toward east of St. Lawrence Island, northeast winds there, that's going to push the ice southward here fairly well here for the next several days. And for the coastal water forecast, much lighter winds coming in for the south coast tomorrow and the southern inside waters, all southerly at 15 knots. Seas along the coast here still just under 20 feet, but for Clarence Strait, 9 feet, south 20 for Stevens Passage, and small craft advisories for south winds at 25 for the Lynn Canal area. North coast here, southwest at 20 knots, and again, seas just under 20 feet. And then for Wednesday, gales here on the south coast, west winds 35 knots, seas near 20 feet, and 20 to 30 knot winds from the west-southwest on the north coast there with 14 to 17 foot seas. Small craft advisories continue for Lynn Canal, south 15 Stevens Passage. Small craft advisory, south winds 25 for Clarence Strait, seas at 6 feet. Prince William Sound, west winds 15 knots, seas 2 feet. And lighter winds and westerly swing the direction around to the west tomorrow for the eastern North Gulf Coast at 25 knots, about 20 knots here farther to the west. Barren Islands, much lighter winds than today. I think they had gusts around 70 miles an hour, peak wind gusts there at Barren Islands. But tomorrow, southwest 15, 16-foot seas, east 15, Kamishak Bay. And Cook Inlet, light winds from the north at 10 knots. And for the following day on Wednesday, north 15 here for northern Cook Inlet, south of the Forelands, northeast 20, turning east 20 for Kamishak Bay, southwest 25 for the Barrens, and small craft advisories here for the North Gulf Coast. Winds west-southwest 25 to 30 knots, and east at 20 for Prince William Sound. Sea's not too bad at 3 feet. Kodiak Island, east-southeast tomorrow for the marine zones there at 25 knots, and southwest of Kodiak Island here to Castle Cape, up across Bristol Bay, southeast winds at 15, and seas at about 15 feet here for the zone south of the Alaska Peninsula, and here for the Alaska Peninsula itself, south to southeast 25. And the outlook for Wednesday, southwest 25 for the peninsula, seas 10 to 15 feet. Pretty uniform wind pattern direction here, both aloft and at the surface. 30 knot winds from the southwest Kodiak Island, Bristol Bay, southwest 25. And for the Fox Islands, west-southwest, 30 knots. Seas 9 to 18 feet, and then west at 38 Akanatka, and that extends all the way out to about Kiska Island. Then from Kiska to Shemya, northwest 30, seas 16 feet. West-northwest, west-northwest here, 30 knots for the western Aleutians. Central areas, Adak and Atka, south to southeast 20, 25. And southerlies, mostly 25 knots there for the Fox Islands, and those seas up to 14 feet. Southwest coast, north of Nunivak Island, brisk wind advisories there. Gale warnings, northeast winds, 35 for St. Lawrence Island, 30 knots St. Matthew Island out of the northeast, much lighter for the Pribilof, southeast at 15, and 20 knot winds there along the Kuskokwim Delta coast. And for the outlook on Wednesday, southwest winds 25 for the Pribilofs, 11-foot seas, and then brisk wind advisories here for all of the southwest coast. South of Nunivak Island, southwest 25, but north of the island, looking at northerlies at 30 knots. And of course, this is the area there that's going to continue to push the ice southward that I spoke of earlier, with gale warnings, St. Matthew Island and St. Lawrence Island, brisk wind advisories for Norton Sound. Really light winds on the east side tomorrow, eastern Beaufort Sea coast, 5 to 10 knots out of the north, with the 10-knot wind on the central coast, pick it up to 15 around Point Lay. Brisk wind advisories, Cape Beaufort, all the way down to Wales for north winds, 25 to 30 knots. And that comes down a little bit on Wednesday. Still brisk wind advisories here for the southeast Chukchi Sea, and 15 knots western Arctic coast, and northwest at 10 on the east side. For tonight, light snow up here across the upper Yukon Valley to the southern slopes of the Brooks Range, and winter storm warning in central interior ends tonight, but continues here through tonight and tomorrow for St. Lawrence Island, the Bering Strait coast. Otherwise, winds starting to trend down with the winter storm warning ending for the northern southeast coast. And there's a look at
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.